There is no denying that science and technology have raised the standard of living in the modern world. It is challenging to fathom human existence without innovations like the personal computer, strides in HIV treatment, and digital photography. Science is not perfect, though mistakes do occur. Failures in science can sometimes be remedied by starting over. In other cases, the tragic outcome is the loss of human life. 10 significant scientific and technological failures from the 20th and 21st centuries are described here, in no particular order. 10. Microsoft Vista. If your computer uses a Windows-based operating system, it probably isn't running Vista. You probably wish your PC didn't run Vista if it does. The negative headlines and known compatibility concerns with older PCs that preceding Vista's introduction on January 30th, 2007 were well documented. Some reviewers asserted that XP, which had established itself as a reliable, stable opus, actually outperformed Vista in terms of PC performance. As a result, Vista received positive reviews from both individual customers and business users. Microsoft was compelled to abandon its plans to phase out the well-liked XP operating system while also accelerating the development of its much-appreciated successor, Windows 7. 9. Cold fusion. Low-energy nuclear reaction, also known as cold fusion, relies on fusing atomic nuclei to produce energy as opposed to traditional nuclear energy, which is based on nuclear fission, or breaking atoms, if properly used. The technique has the ability to generate endless amounts of energy from materials as ordinary as tap water. Stanley Pons and Martin Fleischmann declared they had mastered the technique on March 23, 1989. Cold fusion, however, was largely rejected as a hoax after an early burst of excitement, damaging the careers of Fleischmann and Pons. However, experiments continued for many years. A known byproduct of cold fusion, tritium, was actually created by some, but none of them showed the ability to produce huge amounts of energy. 8. Frontallobotomies. One flew over the cuckoo's nest is the source of most people's knowledge of frontal lobotomies, a commonly used treatment for mental problems through the late 1950s. Swiss Dr. Gottlieb Burckhardt performed the first lobotomies in 1890. One patient died shortly after the operation, and another committed suicide. The procedure was put on hold after those deaths until it was reintroduced and modified in the 1930s. The outcomes of this modified technique ranged from patients going into a vegetative condition to individuals showing minimal change in their behavior. JFK's sister Rosemary became unable to function after having a lobotomy at age 23, and she was institutionalized until her death in 2005. 7. Pentium 2 and Pentium Pro. Complicated math computations are one task that computers excel at compared to almost all humans. However, it was discovered that a whole line of Intel CPUs had flawed math coprocessors in 1994. The flawed CPUs gave inaccurate results up to the 9th decimal place, which could result in significant inaccuracies for power users who demand absolute accuracy. Intel was aware of the issue but believed that most customers wouldn't notice. Even after the flaw was discovered, Intel initially only restored defective chips for customers who could prove that they had been negatively impacted, but eventually offered repairs to anybody who requested them, free of charge. 6. 8-track player. The idea behind 8-track players was that music fans wanted to be able to listen to their favorite songs repeatedly without having to bother with cassette or vinyl record switching. 8-track devices gave owners the opportunity to enter a tape and listen to it until they got tired. The primary issue and a significant factor in the 8-track player's eventual downfall was its propensity to switch tracks mid-song, occasionally severing important phrases. Nevertheless, they were extremely popular in the 1960s and 1970s and continue to have a cult following. If you are enjoying the video, subscribing to this channel would be scientific. 5. Hydrogen airships. A string of hydrogen airship catastrophes that took place in the first third of the 20th century preceded the 1937 Hindenburg disaster. The balloon was positioned directly above the passenger and crew compartments, with the numbered cells housing the highly flammable gas that powered hydrogen airships. As a result, the Hindenburg's fire spread quickly, and in less than a minute, the entire ship was destroyed. The fact that the Hindenburg was already out of date was a cruel irony of the catastrophe. A Pan American Airways N-130 China Clipper had traveled more than far enough to cross the Atlantic in 1935, traveling 2,400 miles from San Francisco to Honolulu. 4. Ford Pinto fuel tank. Ford's president at the time, Lee Iacocca, made the decision to compete against Japanese automakers in the small car market in 1968. He wanted a car that cost less than $2,000 and weighed no more than 2,000 pounds. The outcome was the Pinto, which started being manufactured in 1970. During low-speed testing, The gasoline tank for the Pinto, which is located between the rear axle and bumper, showed significant faults. Ford disregarded advice to relocate or fortify the fuel tank because they reasoned that the additional $11 per vehicle cost would outweigh any potential damage claims. However, after Ford's decision was made public, the company faced multi-million-dollar lawsuits, and for decades afterward, its reputation suffered. 3. Nuclear energy. By dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, the atom splitting altered the direction of World War II. Globally, nations quickly embraced nuclear power after the war to deliver what was seen as clean energy that was independent of politically unstable oil-producing regions. However, the massive radiation-related illnesses and fatalities caused by the Fukushima meltdown in 2011 and the Chernobyl disaster in 1986 have prompted many nations to reconsider their reliance on nuclear energy. In particular, Germany, which had put a hold on its scheduled nuclear power plant decommissioning, abruptly changed course in March 2011 in the face of substantial protests. 2. Flying car. You won't be flying about in a flying automobile anytime soon, but George Jetson has one. The problem is not technology. The Civil Aeronautics Administration, the forerunner to the Federal Aviation Administration, granted certification to the amphibian in 1946. This modified aircraft had a top speed of 120 miles per hour and a top speed of 50 miles per hour. The Aerocore, which the FAA authorized in the 1960s, had a top speed of 120 miles per hour. Both inventions were stalled due to a lack of funding. The Securities and Exchange Commission, on the other hand, filed a lawsuit against Paul Mueller in 2003, alleging that he duped investors out of more than $5 million in stock sales for a skycar that never actually accomplished unassisted flight. 1. Permanent space colonies. There has always been a desire to travel beyond Earth, and that desire still exists now. Plans to create permanent laboratories on the moon starting in 2024 were announced by the American Space Agency NASA in 2006. A Dutch business started developing plans in 2012 for a mission that would send 4 astronauts to Mars in April 2023. The mission would send fresh colonists to Mars every 2 years, with none of the travelers ever coming back to Earth. However, due to logistical difficulties, large-scale permanent space colonies continue to be beyond the reach of technology. Permanent space colonies would need, at the very least, self-sustaining oxygen, food, water, and medical supplies, not to mention skilled, resilient pioneers. In conclusion, a number of modern science failures are destined to stay failures. However, some modern failures can become successes if technology catches up with them. Other innovations can already be used by consumers if they have the funding, the perception of a need, or both. After all, a lot of the breakthroughs we take for granted today started off as crazy concepts that languished as duds for months, years, or even decades before their full value was recognized. Subscribe for more.